Welcome to the Vanishing Twin Syndrome podcast, the podcast dedicated to exploring the complex and often overlooked realities of vanishing twin syndrome. I'm Dr. Nicole Cubbage, your host, and whether you've experienced this phenomenon firsthand, are supporting a loved one, or are simply curious about this unique aspect of twin and multiple pregnancies, you're in the right place. Vanishing twin syndrome is a medical mystery that affects countless families, yet it remains underdiscussed in both scientific and personal circles. Through this podcast, we'll bring you expert insights, personal stories, and discussions on the emotional, medical, and even spiritual implications of losing a twin in utero. Each episode, we'll talk with researchers, healthcare professionals, and those with lived experiences to shed light on what it means to be a twinless twin, how this loss shapes identity, and the latest advancements in understanding this phenomenon. So, whether you're here to learn, connect, or find support, we're honored to have you join us on this journey. Let's start the conversation. Here with me today, I have Victoria Guyadeen, a VTS survivor, or a womb twin survivor, as she likes to identify herself. Hello, Victoria. How are you?
Hi, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So, starting off with the very term womb twin survivor, would you mind explaining that a little bit more in comparison to vanishing twin syndrome survivor and what that means for you?
So, by the definitions, which I got from one of the books that has been very helpful, they define vanishing twin syndrome is a term that they use for the child who had vanished and, passed in the womb. And on the other hand, the womb twin survivor is focused more on the person who has come out and, that they're living in the world, whether that be a singleton or some of them have also another twin and like a triplet or something vanished. So the womb twin survivors focused more so on the survivor of everything.
That's a very interesting interpretation and one that I can certainly appreciate. Could you please explain how did you come to be diagnosed as a womb twin survivor? What was that process like for you?
Growing up, I always felt like, somebody was missing, something was, not right. When I was really little, I just thought that like I was separated from a sibling at birth and I would find them later. And at that, I was around 6 years old. And then I ended up having a lot of health issues. And they decided to do a bladder scope to take a look inside because I had an infection that I couldn't get rid of. And that is when the doctor discovered that I had 3 kidneys and 2 ureters, which mine are actually twisted up around one another. That was the first clue, but I was completely clueless that vanishing twin was a thing. I know at one point in time I did mention to my mom, do you think I could have been a twin? She's like, I don't know, maybe. And it wasn't something that had a lot of weight. I think it was around 2019. I was in the hospital for some GI complications, and a couple rheumatologists who had known me for a while and my case sat me down and they told me they believed I was a conjoined twin. And because I was a conjoined twin, that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic connective tissue disorder, and a few autoimmune diseases. And because of those things, I have a lot of comorbidities. It wasn't until a couple years ago that I learned that I had to address it mentally. And that had been the most freeing and healing thing for me. And I continue to do a lot of work around it. A lot of doctors now are more mindful when working with me that we do have these extra complexities. So I have a few extra organs. I have some extra bone, an arm bone in my stomach, and a little bit of extra DNA. So the extra stuff can cause like issues in general. However, it has also saved my life. When I was septic and went into septic shock, they had determined that the extra organs and stuff kind of was like an internal life support. So it has also my twins things has supported my body throughout like my life. And we didn't have all of the information. There's always like, other things that you can discover. So
Where was there this extra DNA in your body? Your doctors, I take it, diagnosed you as chimeric. Is it correct?
yes.
Where just for the listeners, to verify, and also, did they test the DNA around your body at all? May I ask?
Yeah. They have not like done other like DNA testing. The DNA that we had found was completely accidental, which was the majority of my stuff we accidentally like found out here and there. So they're running genetic testing because of a tumor that I had to see if I had a variant with that. And they accidentally pulled this other information, which made it more difficult to see if I do have these other genes or like missing genes or whatever that contribute to the tumor. Um, but like the DNA and other things with the organs and stuff, they haven't really done much. I think it's a combination of things of people just not knowing enough. Then some of this has happened like during or after COVID, and the healthcare system has been very different since then.
Yeah.
Um, and I have so many like complexities. So I'm not really sure if they would have to say like biopsy different things. I'm not really sure how my body would handle that because it kind of freaks out very easily sometimes, at least in my opinion. Um, so those are, I think, the reasons that they haven't. Like people will take note that I'm a twin and like they know certain things, but there's just definitely not enough knowledge with people that I've worked with. So, yeah, I've kind of like, just gained knowledge, like, as we've gone around and just try to, put my pieces together. This way I can update like the story to tell like, a newer provider, or even if I'm in the hospital, like tell whoever I'm with, like, this is what else we know, or these are the things we're thinking. So,
Yeah. Did you said you've spoken with your mother about potentially being a twin? Was there any indication during her pregnancy or her prenatal care that where she was told she was pregnant with twins?
So she was never told that she was pregnant with twins. And I was born in 94. So, from my understanding, different things that I had been reading and listening to, that they didn't always tell the mother if they didn't think the other baby was going to survive, because they were worried that in postpartum that she would like reject the survivor, which they found out through research. Obviously, that's not true. And subconsciously, mom knows in a way.
Yeah.
So looking back, my mom is able to piece together things in her pregnancy where she was like, this was kind of strange, this was off, and to have a more complete picture for both of us. And it has definitely affected her a lot. It's very difficult, but at the same time, I'm really happy that she's been open to listening to like my perspective and my story around everything.
What questions do you still have that remain unanswered?
Oh boy.
It's a bit of a loaded question, and don't feel obligated to answer anything by any means.
I know for a fact like I'm not done with like doing my work around it, like with healing.
Yeah.
Um Anything else that I could say understand, like with my twin that I was conjoint with, Abriella, um anything that I can learn more about like us, that would just be really helpful. That's not really a question, but I think one of the questions is was I just a twin, or were we triplets? And that's something that has come up off and on over the past couple of years. And I haven't really done a lot of work around it. I've just said, you know what, when I have the capacity to take that on, like, I just want to be able to know that that's okay for me to do. And like, I have the space, like mentally and everything else.
Mhm.
And for me personally, I think it's also once I do more work like around hopefully my conjoint twin that it will be easier and I guess maybe more natural for like the triplet thing to be answered. I mean, that's what I can think of off the top of my head.
The DNA that they found, did they just find one extra set of DNA?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I question if I was a triplet. Some questions, like when I was looking through other medical records and stuff, there's question if I'm intersexed. So if that were to be the case, I wonder if it would be like a triplet thing. I know it would depend on kind of like what type and everything else. That was one of the things I think that kind of like, had my brain going in that direction.
If there was a third, there could have been a third, but only the DNA of whichever twin was in your sac might have actually absorbed into you, at least to the degree that you have been able to observe physically, and through current testing. When it was time for your birth, were there any notable placental abnormalities? Any interesting findings at birth that your mom
Unfortunately,
was aware of?
unfortunately, my mom does not have that information. She was completely put to sleep. Not even like just like like a partial. She was put under like full anesthesia and everything. Um, they were concerned about my life and hers during labor. They just told her that my heart was in stress and that they needed to take me immediately.
Usually, if there are even something like, if there's something even remotely questionable, they'll send it off the placenta off for pathology. Um, and so, if that did happen, um, there may still be some records at the hospital at which your mom gave birth. No, no
No,
hospital.
I tried. Actually, I tried a few years ago.
Oh,
We tried.
really?
And we also tried to even just get other records from like my childhood because by the time I was 9, I was having severe health issues. I always had health issues from the beginning, but they got a lot worse. So we were just trying to find any other information that we could that might be helpful, either for a physician or just for our knowledge. And multiple hospitals that, like, I'd been affiliated with, when we called, they're like, we don't have those records anymore. And I was a little bit shocked and honestly a little bit disappointed.
I could imagine that. And just getting on a personal level here with you, Victoria, I was born in 1995,
Oh,
and
okay.
my mother, she actually had twins after me. I have twin sisters, they're fraternal twins. But then when my mother was pregnant with me, there started two and became one. But when she was pregnant with my sisters, there was three, and then became two. And her pregnancies were natural twins. We have multiples that run in the family, and it was a very similar case. They one day they told her, oh, you're pregnant with twins, and then at the next appointment, they said, oh, there's just one sac in there now, probably just wasn't meant to make it. And my mother really didn't think anything of it, wasn't really a big deal. And also the ultrasound technology at that time wasn't very high resolution in the mid 1990s still. And so
My mom had a lot of trouble with getting pregnant, and they did think that she was going to lose me multiple times. There were a lot of like complications and stuff. So I like, like now you like kind of wonder, okay, maybe one of those times that like you thought something happened, it was like miscarrying.
yeah.
So, so I like we have been putting together like pieces, which sometimes I'm like, wow, this is just like shocking to be putting together these pieces, like so late, you're like, like 30 years and you're like, all right, like trying to, piece together things and it's it's an astonishing journey, that's for sure.
Yeah, I could understand the frustration and a lot of things with that. Perinatal research is still at such an infancy, pun intended. And it's there's a lot of work to be done, and our testing methods are still so limited in what we can really monitor and understand about the womb environment and multiple loss, especially in those very, very early stages, where a lot of women, especially in naturally conceived pregnancies, are not being monitored yet, until later in the first trimester, by which point many losses have already occurred. May I ask, was there any speculation as to the timing of your co-twin's loss in gestation?
There's no clear answer at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's been a lot of different guesses, a lot, but nothing really concrete. So
When you were in the womb, did they notice any of your extra findings, like the extra kidneys or anything?
not to my knowledge, but I know that I was positioned backwards. So they were unable to tell like my gender or anything. And they were not able, like, to manipulate me, to move me one way or another to get a better view. I just remained backwards, is what they had said. And they had just been like, oh, like she's camera shy, like making a little, and nobody, like when my mom had seen, how a baby like really should look, she was like, oh my gosh. I was like, that's normal, whatever you had me. So I'm a little bit different, and that's okay. And I was like, so the way I was positioned was not like normal.
When you said there's been speculation of you being intersexed as well, is this on, and please do not feel obligated to answer this. I know this can be a very private question. Is this more on a hormonal level or a genetic level, or is there some kind of mixed genitalia that was observed?
Hormonal.
Hormonal?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
have a lot of hormonal issues in general, from different systems and different illnesses and stuff. So I was seeing different like patterns, and then like reading, notes and everything that people had left. So
I try to steer away from politics, especially on, this podcast, but I think it's important that we acknowledge this spectrum of sex and gender, because it's not just male and female. And from a scientific point of view, you are a shining example of that, with the hormones from your absorbed twin. And, it's important that we account for that in the scientific literature and also socially. To disregard it, we would be remiss as a society, I think, in a lot of ways. And so that's very important. And I really appreciate you being so brave to talk about that. I'm very grateful for your time with me today, Victoria. To finish out here, I would like to ask, what is your biggest take-home message?
be open to basically anything, because you never know like what direction your life is going to go, what you may discover. I've heard, people talk about finding their twin when they're in their mid 80s. Like it can happen to anybody at any point in time in your life that you discover, hey, it wasn't just me. I am a twin, a triplet, a multiple, like yeah, so to be open and, educated, even if you don't find out like, oh, you're a twin, but you hear somebody's story, um, to really just listen and, be open to hearing about their experience and being willing to be educated on different topics around this. I truly believe that it is a lot more common than people realize.
Well, thank you again for your time today, Victoria. I greatly appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so happy to be able to do this, really.